Good morning. Hello, hello. Who's on? Let's see if I can adjust this just a little bit. Who is on Facebook this morning? It is 10 o'clock Eastern. It is 9 o'clock Central here in Texas. And hoping to have a few people join me because I wanted to talk about benefits. I know that doesn't sound like a very good subject. Doesn't sound like something you should stick around for, but this is such an important conversation. So I wanted to take a few minutes to talk to you about getting mental health care, understanding Tricare a little bit. Now, I'm not like the expert in Tricare. I should invite Amy Bouchat's on here for that. If you don't know her, she's one of the editors for military.com, and she follows Tricare pretty closely. But I get questions all the time about how to get mental health care and the whole thing with marriage counseling and how to navigate your benefits. And there's some big changes that are coming with that. And so I wanted to do the best that I could to at least give you some information that will help you get started. And because I know you're also going to get these, you're going to get these questions from other people. So even if you don't think that you need this information, you probably do. Okay. So if you are watching, usually it tells me like who's here. So if you're watching, say hello, so that I can see you. Okay. So we're going to talk about mental health care because first of all, it has been a crazy couple years, and everybody is exhausted and burned out. I think I traveled every other weekend this fall. It was a lot, doing events and speaking to families and spouses. And I can tell you last year and going into this fall, like we're feeling better since COVID happened, and it's kind of relieved. It's released, I guess, a little bit. It's gotten a little bit better, but that doesn't mean that the after effects are not there. So I would say across the board, what I'm seeing is everybody is still kind of in this place of exhaustion. In fact, I've been doing these wonderful USO sensing sessions to kind of work on some programming for them next year. And we've just been listening to families. And one of the things that we keep talking about is how, when you ask how families are doing right now, like some families are not doing well. A lot of people are not doing well. Some families are saying like, I feel better, like I'm doing better than I was. But then the more we talk about it, the more it's like, are we really actually doing better? Or are we just doing better than we did during COVID, right? Like we have such a threshold for stress, being military families. Say hello if you're watching. I'd love to, for some reason, it's not sharing with me who's watching. So say hello if you're here. But I think that we live such a stress-filled life, military and first responder, but military especially, that I think we have a high threshold, right? And so then COVID hit and it about broke us all, I think. And then we're kind of over that hump a little bit. And so a lot of us are saying that we're feeling better, but that doesn't mean that we're actually doing better. It just means that it doesn't feel like everything is like the world is not burning necessarily like it was before. And so we were talking about how like, we really are still stressed. And many of you, hi, Kathy, good to see you here. Yay. So say hello if you guys are watching. This is so important because I think a majority of us out there are in need of some help, and there's different kinds of help. And so I want to make sure that we cover that. Okay. So I think, some of you PCS, I know we did during COVID. Some of you went through major life issues, life change and transitions also during COVID. And so when you have a stressful lifestyle where you're already going through some major things in your life that are already like worse than most civilians probably would go through, and then you add COVID on top of that, it has just been really rough. And so what I'm seeing across the board is, like, I know I've been talking for a long time on exhaustion and resentment and just how families are struggling, but I'm not just being negative here. I am genuinely saying that families are struggling now. Kids are struggling, the ups and downs of COVID and how that impacted their education, if they moved on top of that. So kids are struggling. And if your kids aren't okay, I know from experience, it feels like you're not okay. Your marriage isn't okay. Then we had Afghanistan. So I'm not doing this video to recap on all the negative things. That's not what this is about. Thank you, Kathy, yes, we're going to cover some of that. So if you have questions, please post your questions. I will do the best that I can to answer. But I'm not like the Tricare expert, but I'm gonna do the best that I can as it relates to mental health care to kind of clear up a few things. So ask questions if you have them. So that first segment of just like, let me just give us all permission that if you need support, if you need help, if you need a professional to come alongside of you, now is a great time to do that. There is no shame in that. I share openly about every other assignment. I go and find a counselor myself. I heard from a spouse who had just the best idea this past week. I think she was National Guard. She was sharing that she has a therapist for each of her kids and herself. And so at any point, if somebody needs help or just someone to talk to, she's got that support. And I loved that idea. It was kind of this idea of having somebody just walk alongside you in life, and they're just on hold or reserve for whenever you need them. Why do all of this alone when you can have somebody professionally that's walking alongside of you? And I just loved that mindset. I loved it. So I want to talk about Tricare. So something very, very important that you need to know is happening right now, and it's called Tricare Open Season. Now, we've been in the military for 13, 14, almost 15 years, and I never paid attention to Tricare Open Season. In fact, I rarely paid attention to Tricare at all, okay? But this is so important for you to know. Hi, James. I see you're watching, Chaplain Baker. I see a lot of you guys out there probably don't pay attention to Tricare just like I didn't. But Tricare Open Season is happening right now, and this is super important for you to know what Tricare Open Season is, okay? Open season for Tricare is the window of time during the year that you have the opportunity to change your Tricare what do you call it? Your Tricare choice, right? So if you're Prime and you want to go to Select, this is your time during open season, during this window to change that. If you're Select and you've decided, it's not working for me, I want to switch to Prime, now during open season is the time for you to do that. You will not be able to change from plan to plan when open season has closed. So let me say that again, okay? If you need to change your Tricare plan, the only time you can change that plan is during open season. Now, the big question is, why should I change my plan, right? If you are like my family, we chose Prime, and we still are on Prime, and we're going to be talking about whether or not we're going to change to Select. I always go back and forth on if it's Select or Standard because it changed it, but it is now called Select. But we originally chose Prime because I didn't want to deal with copays. So if you were making that choice based off of finances, you don't want to meet a deductible, all of that kind of stuff, it's probably an easy decision. Maybe you made that same decision to choose Prime because you wanted to not worry about copays and make it really super easy where, you go to your PCM, and that PCM is your primary care manager, your main family doctor, right? That's assigned to you. It's usually on the military installation that they make those referrals for you. You never pay copays, and maybe that's why you wanted to do Prime. Maybe you don't have any significant medical issues where you need specialties or doctors in like various specialties and referrals. And so Prime is easy for you, right? You have your family care, primary care manager, your doctor, and then if you need a referral, they'll make a referral. They're going to make that referral in-house, or they're going to make that referral in-network. So perhaps you are like our family that chose Prime for those reasons. So Prime is where, exactly as I said, you have your primary care manager. Most of the time, that doctor is in the military installation, and that's great. And most of the time, you're not going to have really any issues with that. And I'm not here to say which plan is right for you or which plan is better. But it's very important for you to know the difference in these plans and how it affects your mental health care and how it might affect the mental health care for your kids, okay? If you are in Prime, if let's say you wanted to go to a counselor, you would go to your primary care manager. Now, they're usually the ones that make the referrals to a dermatologist, to a podiatrist, or to, whatever referral you need, a gastroenterologist, like whatever that specialty is. If you are a beneficiary, we're not talking about active duty service members. Active duty service members are a whole other ball game. Basically, it's all in-house. The military owns them and is going to manage their health care. So if you are a spouse that's listening, I want to specifically talk a little bit more about what it means for you as a beneficiary or a family member, okay? So if you have chosen Prime, we're only talking about mental health care in this case, okay? If you've chosen Prime as your plan, you do not need, listen to me here, this is important. And I know we have a couple chaplains that are watching too. This is important for you guys to know too. If you are in Prime, beneficiaries, you do not need a referral from your primary care manager for mental health care to go see a counselor. Now, this is where people get confused. You do need a referral if you are going to a psychologist for an assessment. Now, what's the difference? What's a psychologist versus a counselor? A psychologist does assessments for things like ADHD or significant mental health issues or diagnoses where you need to have an assessment done, okay? If you need to get a psychological assessment from a psychologist, you're gonna need a referral, okay? If you are getting assessed for substance abuse, you're going to need a referral. But for just straight up regular counseling, if you just need a counselor, you do not need a referral, even if you are Prime, okay? Even if you are Select, you do not need to go to your primary care doctor to get a referral for mental health care, okay? Only if you need an assessment done for like ADHD or a psychological assessment, if you're going for inpatient, all of those kinds of things. Actually, inpatient is a whole other thing, but those kind of a little bit more severe, we need assessments for a certain diagnosis, then you need a referral. Even if you were coming to me for counseling and I, was seeing a kid and I'm thinking, I wonder if we're dealing with ADHD, I would probably send you to your primary care manager for that referral to a psychologist to get that assessment done. Meanwhile, I'm supporting you in counseling, okay? So number one, you do not need a referral for mental health care for counseling. Now we have chaplains that are watching. This is a very important thing for me to distinguish between the two, okay? Chaplains are also available to you and your family. You usually go to a chaplain that is connected to your unit, whoever your service member is attached to, and chaplains are available to you. And some of you have access to family life chaplains who are chaplains that really want to specialize in counseling on your installation, and they are also available to you to do counseling. The huge difference between a counselor and a chaplain is that chaplains hold 100% confidentiality, 100%. As a counselor, I have to report abuse, neglect, sometimes domestic violence, depending on what state I'm in. Chaplains do not, okay? So if that is something that concerns you or something that is relevant to you, just know that a lot of people don't know that chaplains are 100% confidential, okay? But perhaps you want to go to a counselor outside the military. That's the difference, okay? So Prime or Select, you do not need a referral. Now, here's where things get a little bit interesting and a little bit sticky, okay? So if you have questions, please ask me questions while I'm going along. I'll do the best that I can answer, okay? When you are a Prime family, you have the Tricare Prime plan. You are going to be approved to see a counselor that is considered in-network. What does that mean? Okay? In-network, and I was in-network. If you guys remember, I did the Tricare video where I shouted at Tricare advocating for how messed up their system was. Do you guys remember that? That was super fun. That was when I was trying to get in-network with Tricare. I wanted to be in-network with Tricare because I wanted to be able to see, Prime families. I wanted to be able to see active duty service members. It's easier if you're in network. And basically in network means I sign a contract, I sign my name, I make an agreement with Tricare that I will accept what they want to pay me, what Humana wants to pay me, what Health Net needs to pay me. Humana is for Tricare East, and Health Net is for Tricare West, okay? So if you are in network for either of those as a provider, you sign a contract and you agree to take a certain amount and be paid a certain amount by Tricare. Now, there are a lot of providers who are bailing on their contracts. They are quitting in network. I did this too because I didn't like getting paid half of what I was worth. Champus is the amount that has been approved for a certain area. So if I'm in Texas, Champus says you can look it up online and you don't have to. It's not really, doesn't apply to you necessarily. But this is why the Tricare system and in networks and finding a provider is so difficult. This is so important because some of you, I've had so many people come to me and say, I can't find a Tricare provider through their system or whatever in my area. And I want to explain to you why, okay? There are some in your area and I'm going to explain to you how you have access to them still, okay? But it's important for you to understand why and what's going on behind the scenes. Champus is the amount that I am allowed to get paid for my area as a provider. Okay, I can put in my zip code, and it's a certain price for counseling that says this is how much is allowed to be paid to that provider in this area around Fort Hood. Okay, when I sign a contract with Tricare, Tricare might say, will you agree to be paid 60% of that amount? Would you agree to be paid 70% of that amount? Whatever that percentage is listed on that contract. And we as providers, by the way, are not allowed to go around and talk to other providers and talk about what they're getting paid versus what I'm getting paid, what that percentage is. But at the end of the day, I made the decision that I did not like getting paid the amount that Tricare wanted to pay me. Even when I tried to negotiate that amount, they offered me like a 2% increase. It just was not effective. And so many providers, dentists, those providers, family practitioners, not just mental health, that are bailing on contracts because we were not happy, not only with the system and trying to file those claims, but with the amount that we are getting paid. So when I bailed on my in-network contract, I'm still approved as an out-of-network Tricare provider. What does that mean? Okay, that means I can still see military families and I still file claims with Tricare and I still get paid by Tricare, okay? This is so important for you to know. Here's where it comes back to whether or not you are Prime or Select or any of the other plans that you choose, okay? If you're remote, usually you get Tricare remote if you are away from an installation and you don't have access to Prime, and so that's a whole other ball game. We had that in Charlottesville because we were not attached to an installation. So I'm going to try to focus more on Prime versus Select, okay? I see, let me just double check. Question. So yes, I want to respond to somebody asked about, or they didn't ask the question, but they were talking about Chaplain, who was not willing to see them as a family member. This is, so there are some chaplains who are very talented and feel very good at doing counseling services. And there are some chaplains that have other skill sets. Okay. So not all chaplains feel like it's within their skill set to counsel well, right? So it's okay for a chaplain to say, I'm not the best counselor. It's not something, that I lead out on well, but I would recommend and refer you to a family life chaplain, to a counselor off the installation, or using your Prime benefits, your Prime benefits, or your Tricare benefits, okay? So just keep that in mind, that chaplains are available to you, but that doesn't mean that they all signed up to be great and wonderful counselors. So we've got to give some grace on that. But also, this is a good point to make, that whether you go to a chaplain, whether you go to a counselor, when you go for mental health care, it's kind of like dating, okay? Sometimes you're going to go to somebody and it's not going to be the perfect fit. Don't stop there. Go find somebody who is, okay? There have been plenty of people that I've gone to that were not a good fit for me. I've had only a couple. I'm not trying to brag here, but I've only had a couple of families that have come to me where we've decided I wasn't the best fit for them. Whether it's because I couldn't provide the long-term care that I knew that they needed, especially if I was going to be moving, right? Or whether it was just my style was not going to be a perfect fit for them. And so go to the next person and find somebody that is good for you, okay? So thank you for making that note, that it's good. It's okay for you to go to the next person. Okay, going back to in-network versus out-of-network when it relates to your mental health care, okay? When you are Prime, you are going to be approved for a mental health counselor that is in-network, okay? In-network means Tricare has the ability, if you go to somebody, they're only going to approve for you to be in-network with somebody. So if you're trying to get a mental health counselor and you go to your Tricare directory in your list and you find somebody that's in-network and you say, I want to go to that person, right? If they're in-network, if they signed that contract, it's probably not an issue. When it becomes an issue is when you find somebody that you want to go to and you're in the Prime plan and you found somebody in your area that's out of network that you really want to go to, they're going to deny you going to that out of network. If there are in-network people that are already contracted in your area, they're not going to approve for you to go to somebody out of network when you have plenty of people that are supposedly in network that you have access to. Let me explain how this rolled out in an example with one of my clients that I had. During COVID, everybody was approved. They relaxed on all of the rules. And so it was almost like we were able to see anybody that needed help. There was no copays. I mean, it was amazing not amazing to go through COVID, but when it came to mental health care, like telehealth was going great. They opened that possibility. I was seeing out of network. I was seeing in network. As an out of network provider, I was able to see everybody. I was getting paid, and it was like beautiful. It was fantastic. And then when COVID started to kind of get a little bit better, everything went on lockdown again. And so I had prime clients that were seeing me. I'm an out of network, that everything was being approved. We were full into our treatment plan. We were doing great work. And suddenly all of their claims, all of their sessions were getting denied. Tricare was unwilling to pay me for those sessions because now there was somebody, the Tricare manager, the person that's between the doctor and Tricare approval and payment, that basically was saying, no, we cannot pay this out-of-network clinician anymore because there's enough in-network clinicians that they can go see. Even though I wrote letters, even though she went to her primary care manager that said, hey, I want to give a referral to this out-of-network provider that she's been seeing for a while, even though we had all the documentation to show this is a continuity of care issue, even though we were showing that she was doing great in her treatment plan seeing me, they denied this prime beneficiary from continuing care with an out-of-network provider because there's plenty of in-network available to her, okay? So that's really important for you to know. If you are in prime, you are really only going to get approved to see in-network providers if there are showing some that are available to you in your area. If there is no in-network providers in your area that's showing available, then they might approve for you to go out of network. And that makes sense, right? If there are people that are contracted to serve you in your area, then you have people available to you. That's what Prime is about. Prime is your primary care can make that referral and you can go see someone in network, and that's what you've chosen in your plan for Prime. Okay, so when you choose the Prime plan, you're basically saying, I really only want to see in network and I don't want to have copays, and so I'm fine with the system basically making those approvals for me on who I see, and you're only going to see in-network providers unless there is, let's say, nobody in your area that can provide gastrointestinal, specialty, then they might approve for you to go to out-of-network. Okay? Now, if you decide you want to go to that out-of-network anyways and you are Prime, then Tricare is going to say that was your choice. You're now going to have to use your point of service option, which basically means you're going to be paying out of pocket for whatever a significant amount means, okay? That just means you're going to have to pay full price to that mental health counselor that's out of network, pay full price because you are making the choice to do something different than your plan offers, okay? Does that make sense? Please let me know if that makes sense. So if you are Prime plan and that's the one that you want to choose, and the whole reason why I'm explaining this to you guys right now is that, again, right now is open season for Tricare. Now is the time until, I think it's December 8th. It's only 1 month of a window that you have open to change your plan if you want to. After that window closes, you cannot change your plan. So if you are watching right now, give me like a thumbs up or something if it makes sense that if you are Prime and you are in network, you are only going to be able to see people that are in network in your area, and that's the only way you're going to get approved. You're not going to be able to go to an out-of-network provider that's local to you if it's showing that they're in network available, okay? Okay, I see some thumbs up. That's great. Okay. Here's where that becomes a problem, okay? If you are wanting to see a clinician that specializes in adolescents, right? And you look at your in-network providers and it looks like nobody in your area sees children, or nobody in that in-network Tricare directory sees adolescents. Now you're like, I want to go to somebody that works with adolescents and children, or I want to go to somebody, maybe I want to go to this military spouse clinician that understands my life, but she's out of network. Right? If you are Prime, you can't go see that person. They're going to deny your ability to go to that out of network because you chose Prime and you chose to go with a system or a setup that's only going to funnel you to in-network. And that's okay if that's what you want to choose. But if you decide, I want to choose who I go see, I want to have the ability to make that choice for myself, to comb through the directories and decide if I want to see somebody out of network, that they're going to deny that claim, okay? So let me give a a little bit more information on this out-of-network. Thank you guys for staying with me on this. This is so important, and I know I'm getting into the weeds here, but it's so important that you understand this. I'm trying not to go too deep into the weeds to confuse anybody, but please ask questions if you need to, okay? Now, out-of-network provider does not necessarily mean that you pay out of pocket, okay? I am an out-of-network provider for Tricare, and all of my Tricare Select clients, I file claims with Tricare, Tricare pays me, and the Select, they pay a copay. Okay, so just because somebody's out of network does not mean that you have to pay full price, okay? Some out of network have not made that agreement with Tricare, and they are private pay, okay? But just because your clinician, just because your counselor says I'm out of network does not mean that Tricare won't cover it, okay? So some out-of-network providers that are out of network, like me, will file your claim with Tricare for you, where you don't have to do anything. I invoice you, you pay the copay to me, I file with Tricare, Tricare pays me, everybody's happy, okay? Some clinicians will kind of do it a little bit differently, where Tricare will still pay for it, but you will pay the clinician that price, and you'll go to Tricare and ask for that reimbursement, okay? So instead of the clinician doing that heavy lifting, they have the client do that heavy lifting. But either way, Tricare will cover it if they're an approved out-of-network provider. So please hear me say, just because a provider's out-of-network does not mean you cannot use those services, okay? Again, if you're Prime and you try to go to an out-of-network, you're probably going to be paying out-of-pocket full price because you've made that choice. Tricare's not going to cover that. It's going to go through your point of service. Look it up. There's probably a limit to your point of service, but you're going to be paying full price for a while, okay? If you choose Select, you pay a copay, you have the right to choose who you want to go see. You just pay that copay, you see who you want to see, and for a lot of out-of-network providers, they'll file that Tricare claim for you, or you'll get reimbursed by Tricare, okay? So important for you to know. It gives you the ability to choose. So right now, most of my client caseload is Tricare Select are able to see me. And I cannot even tell you how many mental health clinicians are out of network right now, how many military spouse or veteran clinicians who understand your world have chosen to go out of network, and they are out there and they're competent and they're ready to serve you. But you may not be seeing them because they're out of network. Because if you're going to Tricare and you're only looking through those directories, they're only going to show you in-network providers. They're not going to show you the out-of-network providers. They're not going to show you, although they are starting to build a directory, and I'm so thankful that they are starting to show some of those out-of-network providers. But I just want you to know that there are more clinicians than you realize out there and available to you that are accepting patients, but some of them might be out of network. Some of them are only going to be private pay. They're not going to work with insurance companies, but it's worth it if you are choosing that, okay? So if you have questions, please ask me now, because I want to make sure that I cover all the things. I'm going to finish this little video. I'm going to finish it up by talking about, the difference between military one source and all that kind of stuff, okay? So again, recap, okay? Right now is open season for you to change your plan if you want to change it, okay? If you want to be able to choose who you go see and you don't mind paying a copay, and you would like the opportunity to see an out-of-network provider, especially as it relates to mental health care, if you want to go to a counselor who is out of network and you want to choose who that is, and you don't want to be limited by whether or not they're in network, you can change from Prime to Select. You do have a copay. It's at the beginning of every year. I'm sorry, not you do have copays, but you have a deductible. It's not very much, okay? So at the beginning of every year, we're coming up on January, right? So a lot of my clients who are Select, usually it's about $150 is their deductible. So they pay full price on the sessions with me or their doctors, whoever they're seeing. And so they hit that deductible pretty quickly. If you're also seeing a pediatrician or if you're seeing whoever, you meet your like $150 deductible. And then after that, you just have copays. Okay. So don't let that deter you, because that if you can afford it, that deductible is really not that bad, okay? But after they meet that deductible and they only have copays, it gives them the ability to choose who their specialty providers are. And that really is helpful for those mental health clinicians if you want to see an adolescent, if you want to see a provider that works with adolescents or children, or a military spouse clinician that happens to be out of network. How much is the typical copay? Great question. I see anything from $15 to I think I've seen $25. Not much. I remember way back it was like $35 was the most I ever saw for a copay. Okay, so but I would say most part my select clients run about $15 to $25, and that also depends on the kind of session it is. That's a great question. So if it is an individual session, I want to say. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I want to say the copay works out to be like $24, $21, something like that. Sometimes a copay is like $11. And it also depends on where they are on their deductible, right? So at first they might get a first full pay for the session, do that a couple times. But if they've already maxed out their deductible, that individual, let's say military spouse is coming to see me, they meet that deductible because they also went to their family care doctor and then they came and saw me for a session. They're going to go through that deductible pretty quick. And then we're really only going to be working with copays. Okay, for the rest of the year, we're only talking about copays, and they get to see who they want to see. Okay, so that's why this is so important. That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Okay, so here are your choices when it comes to benefits. There's lots of opportunities that are out there. By the way, this doesn't even get into if you have a full-time job and you have other benefits outside of that. Sometimes Tricare wants you to use your other insurance company before you use a Tricare. Okay. So that's a whole other subject. When it comes to getting mental health care, I want to clear up a couple things. Number one, we already talked about chaplains are available to you. That doesn't mean all chaplains love counseling. If they're a family life chaplain, they have usually a master's degree in counseling that they want to go that route of chaplain that does counseling. So there are also those available that are on the installation, family life chaplains that's what they want and love to do is counseling. So they're available to you. Remember, all chaplains have 100% confidentiality. Okay, 100% confidentiality. They do not report. Now, if you report abuse, neglect, they might talk to you about the benefits of reporting it and getting you safe and all those kinds of things. But they have 100% confidentiality, more confidentiality. It's like priestly privilege, more confidentiality than I have as a clinician. Okay, so that's one area you can get help. There are also MFLACs that are usually available on the installation. What is an MFLAC? An MFLAC is very similar to Military OneSource. They're clinicians, so I have been a Military OneSource provider. I have long thought that if I ever needed a job at some point, if I needed to become an MFLAC, I could. So it's basically clinicians that MFLAC contracts with an insurance company to provide those services. You're assigned to a unit, you're assigned to an installation. MFLACs provide what we call non-medical counseling. It's the same thing as Military OneSource, kind of same setup, all right? Military OneSource, when I was a Military OneSource provider, I contracted with an insurance company that the DoD works with. There was Beacon is who I contracted with to provide those non-medical services as a counselor. So even though I'm a counselor, I'm providing 12 sessions. They're like coaching sessions, okay? It's another way of saying coaching. So I'm not doing a diagnosis. I'm not taking notes. I'm not diving maybe deep into your childhood. I'm providing a limited number of sessions. So it's like coaching, okay? But as a clinician, I'm just agreeing that I'm not providing counseling. I'm providing these non-medical kind of coaching sessions, okay? So MFLACs, that's what they're doing. They are licensed professional counselors. They have that skill set, but they're providing a limited number of sessions. They're not taking notes, and they're available to you. And also they're embedded in your schools on the installation. I know even when we were off the installation, but close to the installation, MFLACs would spend one day a month or maybe one day a week in those schools where military kids are, and we could see the military kids in the schools, okay? So MFLACs are wonderful if you just have like a stress issue, a marriage issue, a life issue, you need your kids to be seen, kind of working on anger management, bullying, that sort of thing. Those MFLACs are available to you, okay? But it's non-medical, and that's why it doesn't go through Tricare, okay? Military OneSource works very similar, okay? Military OneSource, we are licensed professional counselors that have contracted to say we will provide non-medical counseling services, which is why people who need marriage counseling are going to go through Military OneSource, okay, or funneled through Military OneSource. This is a huge question I get, and a lot of people get kind of really worked up that Tricare, it says that one thing that is not covered is marriage counseling, right? And that throws a lot of people. Why does Tricare not cover marriage counseling? Because marriage counseling is a life issue, not a medical issue. Tricare is medical insurance, right? So if it is a medical diagnosis, bipolar, depression, anxiety, then Tricare covers mental health care. But marriage counseling is kind of a life issue. It's a stress issue. And so they say that they don't cover mental or marriage counseling. However, when a military spouse comes to me because they don't need a referral, when a military spouse comes to me for counseling and they want help with marriage issues, I open the chart in the military spouse's name, and I have the ability to bill for a session, for an individual session with that military spouse, but I also have the ability to bill that session for that individual, that it's a family session with the patient present. In other words, I am billing for a family session between a military spouse and the active duty spouse, a marriage session, but it is with the patient present. Okay, so I have the ability through Tricare to do a session with a couple. Okay, the chart is in the spouse's name. Usually I have to give a diagnosis to bill Tricare. Most of us clinicians, if I can help it, I'm always going to give that military spouse a diagnosis of the mildest thing I can possibly give them, which is adjustment disorder unspecified. Okay, because we are constantly adjusting. Okay, it doesn't mean that you're going to have a disorder for life, but it is the mildest thing I could possibly give in order to do a Tricare diagnosis to bill Tricare. Okay, so you can, as a couple, go see somebody for Tricare. That's the way we do it. You open the chart in the spouse's name, and then your spouse can come for a family session with the patient present. So it is possible. But Tricare says that they do not cover like legitimate ongoing marriage counseling. That's the way that I bill it. So Military OneSource is great for marriage counseling because it's not medical, okay? It is basically coaching. They give you 12 sessions. You can renew those sessions if you need to. It's usually with a clinician. So I contracted and I work with Tricare. And for a while there, I was also a Military OneSource provider, providing basically the same service, okay? It's just two different ways for you to get help. So that's why they will usually funnel you marriage-wise. Ask me a question if this is not making sense. Give me a thumbs up if I am making sense, because sometimes it sounds a little technical. Give me thumbs up if I'm making sense on if you need marriage counseling. A lot of times they're going to funnel you to Military OneSource or to an MFLAC because marriage counseling is a life stress issue. It's not necessarily a medical issue. And so they're going to send you for that non-medical counseling, what I would kind of call coaching, through Military OneSource, through an MFLAC. Chaplain is great, but you can do it through Tricare. There is a way for you to go as a military spouse, open your chart, and then say, I need help with as a couple. Thank you for those thumbs ups. Thumbs ups. I think that's the way to say that. Ask me questions if you have them. Okay. So there are some other under the radar ways that you can get help. So you have Chaplain, you have Tricare, mental health counselor that's in network versus out of network. Out of network sometimes means that you private pay, sometimes worth it, okay? And sometimes those out of network actually can bill for Tricare, but you cannot see that out of network counselor if you are prime, okay? You are only going to be able to see that out-of-network counselor if you are select or if there are no in-network providers in your area, okay? So that's one of the reasons why I'm considering us moving to select, so I have a little bit of a choice, and I might be willing to pay those copays for that choice, okay? So Chaplain, Tricare, you have your MFLACs, you have Military OneSource, you have things like Give an Hour. I've done Give an Hour before where I was a Give an Hour provider. except as a couple, it's recorded under active duty spouse. Give me what do you mean by that? Because if you are seeing me as a spouse, I can, if I'm in network, I can see you as a prime spouse. If I'm in network, your active duty service member can tag along for that session as a family session with patient present. But you do have to, it's a whole other ball game of red tape to see active duty service members, okay? So I'm not talking about active duty service members. You have to get referrals. They're going to kind of keep you in the behavioral health system as best as they can before they're going to make a referral to an in-network provider or an out-of-network provider, okay? That's a whole other way to see things, okay? But again, if you are select, you can see as a beneficiary, you do not need a referral to get mental health care with an out-of-network provider, okay? All right, so ask questions if you have them. You do need a referral. Again, going back to the beginning, you do need a referral if you are getting psychological assessment, if you're seeing a psychologist, or if you are substance abuse, if you're going through substance abuse, okay? I'm not the perfect expert on Tricare, but I want to give you guys at least a high-level understanding, okay? There are things like Give an Hour. Give an Hour does provide, basically, if I'm a Give an Hour provider, then I basically say I'm willing to, for free, voluntarily see a family, a military or veteran family for the duration of their treatment. I would take on like one family at a time for the duration of their treatment. It's a really good way to get off the radar help, not filing with Tricare, not in any kind of system whatsoever. It's just off the radar. I did that for a while, but to be honest, I was volunteering a lot. And so at some point I had to make sure that I was bringing in income that made sense for the amount of energy and time that I was giving away. Okay, last chance to ask me any questions if you have them. I know that this was long. I hope that it's making sense. Again, it's open season for Tricare. If you need or want to consider to change your plan from Prime to Select or from Select to Prime, if you need lots of specialties, if you are wanting to really utilize your benefits and you want the freedom of choosing who that is, Select is probably going to be your best choice. If you don't have a lot going on in your family, think everybody's well, you don't really feel like you need the choice, you really just need the ease of convenience of going to that primary care manager who is going to make those referrals for you in-house. That worked for us great for a really long time. That's fine for you to do too. Filing Tricare anytime active duty is difficult, even when treating the spouse. I would agree with that. So again, to kind of share with that story, when you are active duty, if you are a spouse and you are not a service member, you can, if you are Prime, they're going to send you to an out-of-network provider. As long as that provider is in network, they're going to approve for you to see them. It shouldn't be an issue. If they're in network, that clinician is filing the claims for you because they're in network, okay? And they've agreed to take that price cut from Tricare to see you and to see you easily, okay? If you are wanting to see an out-of-network, it becomes difficult, okay? Now, if you're Select, not difficult at all. I've not really had any issues with seeing Select. They pay the copay. Tricare pays me. I file with Tricare. If that clinician does not want to file for you, they may have you pay full price and then you just get reimbursed. But if it is, if you're a spouse, if you're a beneficiary, that would be the difference, okay? Doesn't mean Tricare can't be difficult from time to time. Believe me, sometimes they just change a rule all of a sudden, throws us all off, such as when the COVID benefits changed, it was terrible. I was so frustrated with Tricare because I went from treating my Prime clients and really making wonderful progress to completely a dead stop. I could no longer see them and we had to find them an in-network provider. They had to start all over. I was furious. They were furious. But if they would have been Select, it wouldn't have happened. And all of my Select clients continued to work with me, no issue. But when they were Prime and Tricare changed those rules, since I'm out of network, it cut them off completely. Okay. All right. Select. Be more specific. Would your question on Select. what your question is before I let you guys go. These questions have been great. The feedback has been great. So if you are select, you can see an out-of-network provider. If that out-of-network is an approved Tricare out-of-network provider, then we can file those claims. Tricare pays us. If they are out-of-network and they're not approved by Tricare, you might be looking at private pay. If you're Prime and you want to out-of-pocket pay for whoever you want to pay for, you can do that. No problem. Okay, you just go and find that provider, go get some help, pay out-of-pocket, then you're good, okay? Tricare, so again, your plans, there's lots of plans. There's Tricare Prime, Tricare Select. There is Tricare Prime Remote if you're in a location that's not close to an installation. When we were in Charlottesville, we switched to Tricare Prime Remote. It kind of worked like Select, except for we didn't have copays. Let's see. By the way, Tricare Prime, if you use I noticed we're changing from Walgreens to CVS again for pharmacies. I think I saw that come through. So even if you're Prime, if you're not getting your prescriptions at the installation pharmacy and you go to Walgreens or CVS, you're looking at copays even if you're Prime. Okay, that may show up. So I know there's all these details, but I'm trying to keep it as easy as possible. But there's also Tricare for Life, and then there's if you're retired, and there's all these other kinds of things. But I really wanted to at least clear things up when it comes to mental health care and whether you are Prime and remote. Okay, again, open season is right now. You don't have to make this decision just purely based off of what I'm saying. Go on the Tricare website. They have very good, I'll try to share them on my Facebook page right after this video. I will share with you some tables that show the difference between Prime and Select, that will show what's covered for mental health care so that you can make the best choice that you can. But go and educate yourself before the window closes, because once that open season window closes, you will not be able to change your mind. Okay, so if you find yourself in January, February, March saying, I want to go to a counselor and I want to go to this counselor, and they happen to be out of network, if you're Prime and you would get denied, okay? You'd have to go to whoever's in the area that is in network, and then you're limited with those people, and they may be great. You may be fine. In fact, I have gone to Prime clinicians, and they were fantastic, but some of you have reached out to me and said that they were very frustrated because they wanted specifically to see me, or they wanted specifically to see someone else, and as Prime, they could not get reimbursed for it, because it makes sense, doesn't it? And I'll close with this. It makes sense that if you, the beneficiary, made the choice, okay, this is why I can't fight this. There's a lot of battles I'm willing to fight with Tricare, and you've seen me fight some of those battles. But this is one of those battles I can't fight, right? I can't, as an out-of-network, go to Tricare and say, wait a minute, this Prime client wants to see me, and they've been seeing me for a while. So based off of continuity of care and what's best for that client, you should continue to pay me as the provider. Tricare has every right to say, no, that beneficiary chose Prime, that they would choose to go with a plan where they would only see in-network providers. That was the client's choice. So now they can't change that. That's what they decided. That makes sense, right? I also, as a clinician, made the choice to be out of network. They basically have every right to come to me and say, if you want to see that Prime client, then you need to be in network, which is why I was so frustrated, because it almost felt like a way of bullying clinicians back into in-network contracts, that if you want to see those Prime people, you got to be in network and sign those contracts again and be paid less. And that's very frustrating. But at the end of the day, it's your choice to be Prime or Select or whatever plan you choose. And it's our choice as providers on whether or not we choose to be in network or out of network. And so as a provider, I'm going to have to make the choice that is in the best interest of my business and of how I want to be treated by the insurance companies. And you have to make the choice that you need to make on what's best for your medical and mental health care. Okay? No. Okay, so I'm not sure. I think your name is Aaron Wood. I just want to answer this really quick before I let everybody go. She said, I can't as a client see you with my husband who is active duty for marriage counseling. Okay. not fully true, okay? Let me challenge that, and this is why I wanted to do this video and why this is so important, okay? Your spouse, okay, so your spouse is active duty. So here's where it all gets confusing. So I am gonna close with this because this is why I wanted to do this video, okay? So here's why it feels like you as a military spouse married to an active duty service member cannot get marriage counseling from Tricare. Okay, you can, but just listen very carefully how you can, all right? Tricare is going to say, number one, they're going to say, we do not cover marriage counseling, so no. All right, so that's one reason why you feel like you cannot get marriage counseling from Tricare. The other thing that Tricare says is active duty service members can't just go to an in-network provider of their choice because the military basically owns active duty service members and they're going to go to their own PCM and they're going to go to behavioral health. And if that active duty service member wants to get counseling, then they have their own red tape and they have their own process of getting that help, okay? So that's why it seems like you cannot get marriage counseling. But I'm going to tell you how you can get marriage counseling through Tricare, okay? You can get marriage counseling by you as the spouse going to, so if you're prime, you would go to an in-network provider. You would go to that clinician and you would say, I want to come to you and get counseling, but I would like to have some couples sessions, okay? So that in-network provider, if you're prime, you would go to in-network. If you're select, you can also go to an out-of-network provider and choose who you want to go to. And you as the spouse would go, okay, I see that you understand how, but I want to finish this because this is possible. You go, and then your spouse would tag along for those sessions. The chart is in your name. And that is how you can have Tricare cover couples sessions, but the chart is in your name. If you want to get, if you just need 12 sessions and you don't want to go through Tricare and go through any of that, you can go to Military One Source. A lot of the same clinicians that are with Tricare are also on Military One Source. And you can get those sessions, 12 sessions or less, through those local clinicians, okay? I think that we contract through Military One Source. If I remember right, I believe that our contract says that if I see you through Military One Source, I can't then take you as a client through Tricare. So you can't switch from one to the other. If that clinician does both, if they are both a Military One Source provider and a Tricare, I think it said in the contract that I can't go from being your Military One Source provider to now your Tricare. So Military One Source, you have those 12 sessions. Okay, so I know this was a lot of information. Go and look up Tricare Open Season. Make sure that you are in the plan that you want, that makes sense for you. Look up the point of service. If you are a prime and you think that you might want to see an out-of-network provider at some point, look up what that point of service means for you. Look up the deductible. If you were going to switch from prime to select, look up the deductible, what that would look like for select. Look up what those copays would look like and ask yourself if it's affordable and if that's worth you making the change. But I wanted to make sure you understood how to use your benefits as it relates to mental health care. So hopefully this was helpful. I know it's a lot of information, probably more information that you want, but I see very few people just doing a video. I'm just putting it out there so that you understand it, okay? If you have more questions, please post them. I'll do the best that I can to answer them. I will also post some of these links. Probably what I'll do is I'll post a link on this Facebook page, and then under that link, I will post some of those charts and images and that sort of thing to help you. I have one more question maybe that came in. Yes, Tanisha, that is actually one of the reasons why I stopped being a Military One Source provider, because I could be in the middle of a session with somebody and miss the call. So when you as a family member call Military One Source and say, I want to work with a clinician, it's like they put you on hold and then that Military One Source calls the Military One Source provider and tries to hook you up right there. And then if you miss the call, then I have to call back and then we're playing phone tag. And then it's this very awkward thing. And if I do pick up the phone, I'll be honest with you, it was very awkward to pick up the phone and have the client and the Military One Source representative right there. Do you want to take this client? And if I'm full and I can't take the client, I feel really bad on the phone going, I'm sorry, I can't take that client. That's defeating, I feel like, for that client. And so it's a little bit of something. I'm a huge fan of Military One Source. In fact, I'm going to be their keynote speaker next week, Tuesday, keynote speaker for the Relationship Summit. I hope you will register for it. It is a whole summit dedicated to taking care of your relationship. So I'm not downplaying Military One Source. It just was not a great fit for me. In fact, I've gone out of network and I'm so busy doing some other things. I just couldn't do all the things. Okay. So it is definitely a useful resource for you to look into. But if you have not registered for the Relationship Summit that is next week, I'll be the keynote speaker kicking off the whole DoD Military One Source Relationship Summit for next week. I hope you'll tune in. I'm going to be talking about how you can connect very quickly with your spouse, the importance of being intentional in your relationship, and why it's worth you being intentional even in this very stressful, difficult lifestyle. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope that you will register for that if you haven't already. I think I heard this morning almost 1,000 people have already registered for the summit. There's going to be some fantastic speakers for the Relationship Summit. I know one of my favorite military spouses, Siri is all the time talking to me or thinking that I'm talking to her. There's some fantastic speakers that are going to be talking and investing into your relationship. So I hope that you will take advantage of that free resource coming at you next week. So definitely register for that as well. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for the good questions and comments. Again, ask me other questions if you have them. Sorry if this was long and technical, but hopefully it was helpful. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you soon.